The ink on the divorce papers wasn't even dry when the photo hit the internet. It was a grainy, long lens shot taken from a cliffside in Monaco. But the subject was unmistakable. Harper, the woman who had just walked out of a Los Angeles courtroom with nothing but the clothes on her back, was raising a crystal flute of vintage Dom Perignon. She wasn't crying. She wasn't hiding. She was sitting on the aft deck of the Leviathan, a 400-foot floating palace owned by the most elusive billionaire in the tech world. Her ex-husband, Arthur, thought he had stripped her of her dignity. He was about to realize that while he was playing checkers, Harper had been playing a game he didn't even know existed. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old mahogany, a scent that usually inspired fear in those whose fortunes were on the line. But for Arthur Kingsley, it smelled like victory. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Italian suit, glancing at the Patek Philippe on his wrist. It was 9 a.m. sharp. He had allocated exactly 45 minutes for this procedure. He had a board meeting at 11 House and a lunch date with Jade at 12:30. Across the heavy wooden table sat Harper. She was wearing a simple navy dress, one he had seen a dozen times before. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, revealing the sharp line of her jaw. She looked tired, Arthur thought with a smirk. Defeated. "Mr. Kingsley," the judge said, peering over his spectacles, "your counsel has presented the revised settlement agreement. It stipulates that Mrs. Kingsley waives all rights to the Kingsley Tech shares, the Malibu estate, the Aspen Lodge, and any future royalties from the Project Ether software suite. In exchange, she receives a lump sum of $50,000 and retains possession of her personal vehicle, a 2018 sedan. Is this correct?" Arthur's lawyer, a shark named Mr. Henderson, who charged more per hour than most people made in a month, leaned forward. "That is correct, Your Honor. The prenuptial agreement was ironclad, but Mr. Kingsley has graciously agreed to the $50,000 stipend as a gesture of goodwill to help Mrs. Kingsley transition." It was an insult, a calculated, brutal insult. $50,000 was less than Arthur spent on wine in a bad quarter. He watched Harper closely, waiting for the outburst. He had prepared for it. He had security outside the doors in case she screamed. He had a statement ready for the press about her mental instability. He wanted her to fight so he could crush her publicly. The judge turned to Harper. "Mrs. Kingsley, I must advise you that this settlement is highly unusual given the duration of your marriage and the significant assets acquired during that time. You are leaving a marriage to a man worth an estimated $400 million with virtually nothing. Do you understand what you are signing?" The room went silent. The stenographer's fingers hovered over the keys. Arthur held his breath, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Here it comes, he thought. The tears, the begging. Harper reached into a purse. She pulled out a cheap plastic ballpoint pen. She didn't look at Arthur. She didn't look at Henderson. She looked the judge dead in the eye. "I understand perfectly, Your Honor," Harper said. Her voice wasn't shaky. It was smooth, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion. "I just want this over with." Arthur frowned. That wasn't the script. "Mrs. Kingsley," the judge pressed, looking concerned, "you have no legal representation present today. Are you sure you do not wish to review the Project Ether clause? My understanding is that you were instrumental in the early development of—" "I said I understand," Harper cut him off gently. She flipped to the last page of the document. The sound of the paper turning was the loudest noise in the room. Scratch, scratch. She signed her name. Harper Prescott. She had already dropped Kingsley. She closed the folder and slid it across the table toward Henderson. Then she stood up. "Is that all?" she asked. Arthur felt a strange prickle of irritation on the back of his neck. Why wasn't she angry? He had just stolen 10 years of her life and the fortune she helped build. He wanted to see her break. "Technically, yes," the judge said, baffled. "The divorce is granted. You are free to go." Harper turned. She didn't glance at Arthur. It was as if he were a piece of furniture, and a tacky one at that. She walked toward the heavy double doors. "Harper," Arthur called out, unable to help himself. He needed the last word. He needed to twist the knife. She stopped, her hand on the brass handle, but didn't turn around. "Don't come crawling back when the 50 grand runs out," Arthur sneered, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Jade has expensive taste. I won't have any spare change for charity cases." Harper paused for a heartbeat. Then she pushed the door open and walked out into the corridor. She hadn't said a word to him. Not one. "She's in shock," Henderson muttered, gathering the papers quickly, as if afraid the ink might disappear. "Total psychological shutdown. Seen it 1,000,000 times. She'll be a wreck by tomorrow." Arthur nodded, straightening his tie. "Pathetic. I almost feel sorry for her. She never did have the stomach for the big leagues." He walked out of the courthouse, feeling lighter than air. He pulled out his phone and texted Jade. "Done. It's all ours. Meet me at Le Bernardin." He didn't notice the black town car idling at the curb as he walked to his Bentley. He didn't notice the man in the driver's seat, speaking into an earpiece. "Package is secured," the driver said. "She's coming out now." Harper walked down the courthouse steps. She didn't walk like a woman defeated. She walked with a strange, rhythmic precision. The town car's rear door opened before she even reached it. She slid inside. The interior was cool and smelled of leather and faint cedar wood. Sitting on the opposite seat was a man with silver hair and eyes like chipped ice. He wore a suit that cost more than Arthur's car. He held out a secure tablet. "Did he sign?" the man asked. His accent was faint, perhaps Eastern European, perhaps simply the accent of old, borderless money. "He signed," Harper said, her voice changing. The softness was gone. It was replaced by the steel tone of a CEO. "He thinks he won the Ether source code." The man chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "And he doesn't know?" "He knows what I let him know," Harper said. She tapped the screen of the tablet, initiating a transfer protocol. Arthur never understood the back-end architecture. He just liked the pretty interface. He has the shell, we have the ghost. And the non-compete? Voided the moment he signed the divorce settlement with the bad faith clause I baited him into, Harper said, leaning back. He was so eager to deny me the money. He didn't realize he was legally emancipating the intellectual property I created before the marriage. He just handed me $1 billion industry for the price of $50,000. "Nicholas is waiting," the man said. "The helicopter is at the Santa Monica airfield. We need to be in international waters by sunset." Harper looked out the window as the car pulled away. She saw Arthur's Bentley speeding off in the other direction, towards his mistress and his temporary victory. "Let's go," she said. "I have a dinner reservation." Arthur Kingsley felt like a king. The lunch at Le Bernardin had been exquisite. Jade, a 24-year-old model with ambition that rivaled his own, had been draped all over him, giggling at his jokes and marveling at his cruelty. "She really just signed?" Jade asked, sipping her martini. "Didn't even ask for the house?" "Not a brick," Arthur laughed, cutting into his steak. "She was broken, Jade. You have to understand, Harper was simple. She was good for the early days, when we were working out of a garage, keeping the books, making coffee. But she couldn't handle the empire. She knew she didn't belong in our world." "Well, good riddance," Jade purred. "Now we can redecorate. I hate that beige sofa in the living room." "Burn it," Arthur declared magnanimously. "Buy whatever you want." By 3:00 p.m., Arthur was back at Kingsley Tech. The headquarters was a glass monolith in Silicon Valley, a testament to his ego. He strode through the lobby, ignoring the greetings of the junior staff. He took the private elevator to the top floor. He walked into his office, expecting the usual hum of activity. Instead, he found his CFO, a frantic man named Gerald, sweating through his shirt. "Arthur, thank God you're back," Gerald stammered, pacing the room. "Calm down, Gerald. What is it? Did the stock dip?" Arthur tossed his jacket onto the couch. "It's not the stock, it's the access," Gerald said, his voice trembling. "The engineering team tried to push the update for Project Ether this afternoon. You know, the one we promised the investors would launch next week? Yes, the update that's going to double our valuation. What about it?" "We can't get in." Arthur froze. "What do you mean you can't get in?" "The source code, it's locked, encrypted. The developers are saying the master key has been changed." "That's impossible," Arthur snapped it. "I have the master key. It's in the digital vault." "We tried it," Gerald cried. "It's invalid, and there's a message, a system flag." Arthur shoved Gerald aside and sat at his desk. He pounded the keyboard, bringing up the command terminal for the company's flagship software. Project Ether was an AI-driven logistics platform used by half the Fortune 500 companies. If it went down, or if the update failed, Kingsley Tech would be sued into oblivion. He typed in his administrative override. "Access denied." He typed it again. "Access denied." Then he saw the system flag Gerald had mentioned. It was a single line of text blinking in the corner of the black screen. "User unauthorized. License reverted to owner V. Prescott." Arthur stared at the screen. The blood drained from his face. "V. Prescott," he whispered. "Harper." "Who is V. Prescott?" Gerald asked, panicking. "Is that a holding company? Arthur, who owns the license?" "She can't own it," Arthur yelled, slamming his fist on the desk. "I own it. We were married. It's marital property. The judge just gave me everything." He grabbed his phone and dialed Henderson. "Henderson, she locked the code. She put a kill switch in the software." Arthur screamed into the receiver. "Calm down, Arthur." Henderson's voice came through, sounding annoyed. "Who? Harper. Who else? Fix it. Sue her. Get an injunction." "Arthur, listen to me," Henderson said slowly. "We can file an emergency motion. But did you read the appendix on the intellectual property definitions in the settlement? The one you told me to just push through so you could make your lunch date?" Arthur went cold. "What?" "There was a definition clause. It defined Kingsley Tech assets as all derivative works. It defined core architecture as the sole property of the original creator, explicitly excluding marital acquisition if the creator is identified as V. Prescott within the code metadata." "You let me sign that?" Arthur's voice was a whisper. "You told me she was too stupid to understand legalese, Arthur. You told me she wouldn't even read it. You ordered me to get the signature at any cost." Arthur dropped the phone. The room spun. "Sir," his secretary's voice came over the intercom, sounding terrified. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to see the news." "I don't care about the news," Arthur roared. "Sir, it's about your ex-wife." Arthur grabbed the remote and turned on the wall-mounted TV. It was tuned to a financial news network. The banner at the bottom read, "Mystery woman spotted on Kincaid Yacht." The anchor was speaking excitedly. In a bizarre twist to the high-profile Kingsley divorce, finalized only hours ago, Harper Prescott has been photographed off the coast of Monaco. And she isn't alone. She appears to be the guest of honor aboard the Leviathan, the super yacht owned by Nicholas Volkov, the reclusive Russian-American energy tycoon and rival to the Western tech sphere. The screen changed to the photo. the grainy image of Harper. She looked glamorous, untouchable. She was wearing sunglasses and holding that glass of champagne. And sitting across from her, leaning in as if listening to every word she said, was Nicholas Volkov, a man Arthur had tried to get a meeting with for 5 years, a man who had rejected Arthur's calls. "Volkov?" Arthur whispered. "How does she know Volkov?" Then the anchor continued. Rumors are swirling that Volkov Industries is about to announce a massive acquisition of a new AI logistics platform that renders current market leaders obsolete. Analysts are asking, is Harper Prescott the secret weapon Volkov has been waiting for? Arthur looked at the TV, then at his locked computer screen. License reverted to owner. She hadn't just left him. She hadn't just taken her code. She had defected to the enemy. And she had done it all while he was bragging about a $50,000 payout. "Get the jet ready," Arthur barked at Gerald, grabbing his coat. "Where are we going?" Gerald asked, running after him. "Monaco," Arthur snarled. "I'm going to kill her." The cabin of the Gulfstream G650 was pressurized to a comfortable 3,000 feet, but Arthur Kingsley felt like his head was about to explode. He poured his third glass of scotch, his hand shaking so violently that amber liquid splashed onto the cream leather upholstery. "Sir," the flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah, approached cautiously. "We are beginning our descent into Nice. The pilot has requested you fasten your seatbelt." "Get away from me," Arthur snarled, slamming the glass down. He stared out the window at the endless blue of the Atlantic, now giving way to the jagged coastline of southern France. He wasn't seeing the scenery. He was seeing the past. He was seeing the garage in Palo Alto 10 years ago. For the last decade, Arthur had told the story so many times he had started to believe it himself. The story where he had the vision. The story where he wrote the code that changed logistics forever. But staring at the encryption lock on his laptop screen, a lock demanding a key he didn't possess, the truth was clawing its way back to the surface. He remembered a humid night in August. He had been pacing the driveway, panicked because they had a demo for a venture capitalist the next morning, and the software was crashing every time it tried to predict shipping routes. He was ready to quit. It was Harper who had stayed up. Harper, who had been working as a barista to pay their rent while he disrupted the industry. She had sat at his cluttered desk, pushed his half-eaten pizza aside, and stared at the lines of C++ for 6 hours straight. He remembered waking up at 4 a.m. to find her asleep on the keyboard. On the screen, the simulation was running perfectly. It was the node logic she had mumbled when he shook her awake. It was trying to force a linear path. I rewrote the kernel to think in 3 dimensions. I gave it intuition, Arthur. Intuition. He had taken that code, presented it to the investors, and never mentioned her name. When they asked who the lead engineer was, he pointed to himself. Harper had stood in the back of the room, holding his coffee, smiling proudly. She didn't care about the credit. She just wanted him to succeed. "You fool," Arthur whispered to his reflection in the window. "You absolute fool." He had mistaken her silence for stupidity. He had mistaken her devotion for weakness. And because he had never bothered to learn how the intuition kernel actually worked, he had no idea how to replicate it. The plane banked hard. The phone on the table buzzed. It was Gerald back in Silicon Valley. "Arthur, the stock is reacting." Gerald's voice was high-pitched, bordering on hysterical. "The news about Harper and Volkov is trending. Harper Kingsley crisis is the #1 hashtag. Shareholders are asking why the ex-wife of the CEO is on a competitor's yacht on the eve of a major update." "Tell them it's a social call," Arthur lied through his teeth. "Tell them they're old friends." "Old friends?" "Arthur, Volkov is Russian intelligence adjacent. He's a shark. If she gives him the key to the ether platform— She won't, Arthur said, though he didn't believe it. Harper is loyal. Somewhere, deep down, she still loves me. She's doing this to get a better settlement. That's all. It's a negotiation tactic. A negotiation tactic? Gerald cried. Arthur, the legal department just found a subroutine in the system logs. It triggered the moment the divorce decree was signed. It's deleting the backups. We are losing historical data by the terabyte. Arthur felt the blood leave his extremities. Pull the plug, he screamed. Shut down the servers. If we shut down the servers, Amazon, FedEx, and Maersk lose their tracking capabilities. The global supply chain halts. We'll be sued for trillions, Arthur. Trillions. Arthur ended the call. He couldn't deal with Gerald. He needed to deal with the source. The jet touched down in Nice with a screech of tires. Arthur didn't wait for the stairs to fully extend before he was jumping onto the tarmac. A helicopter was waiting, the rotors already spinning. He had paid triple the normal rate to skip customs, calling in a favor from a French senator he had once entertained in Vegas. As the helicopter lifted off, banking over the glittering Mediterranean toward the Principality of Monaco, Arthur looked down. The water was dotted with white yachts, looking like toys in a bathtub. "Which one is it?" he yelled into the headset at the pilot. "The big one, Monsieur Kingsley," the pilot replied in heavy French. "You cannot miss the Leviathan. It is the size of an aircraft carrier." And there it was, anchored just outside the harbour, dominating the view. It was a sleek, dark, grey monstrosity, with a helipad, 2 pools, and what looked like a missile defence system. It made Arthur's own 80-foot yacht look like a dinghy. "Land on it," Arthur ordered. "Impossible," the pilot laughed nervously. "That is private airspace. They will shoot us down or file a report that will strip my license. We land at the heliport in Monte Carlo. You take a boat." Arthur cursed. He watched the yacht as they flew past. He could see tiny figures on the upper deck. Was that her? Was that Harper? She was probably laughing at him. He landed in Monte Carlo and sprinted to the harbour. He tried to charter a tender, but the moment he gave the destination, the Leviathan, the dockmaster shook his head. "Mr. Volkov is not accepting visitors. Restricted zone." "I am Arthur Kingsley," Arthur shouted, grabbing the man by his lapels. "I am a billionaire. Take me to that boat." The dockmaster, a burly man who had seen too many tantrums from too many rich men, simply shoved Arthur back. "You could be the King of England, monsieur. You do not step foot on that yacht unless the captain invites you. Rent a speedboat if you wish to wave at them from a distance. But touch the hull, and maritime security will arrest you." Arthur threw a wad of euros at a teenager washing a rental boat. "Give me the keys. Now." 10 minutes later, Arthur was tearing across the water in a fiberglass speedboat. The spray hitting his face, ruining his suit, ruining his hair. He didn't care. He was a man possessed. He steered straight for the grey hull of the Leviathan. As he got closer, the sheer scale of the vessel was intimidating. It was a floating fortress. He cut the engine about 50 yards out, drifting in the yacht's massive shadow. "Harper!" he screamed, his voice lost in the wind. "Harper!" Nothing happened. The yacht sat silent, imposing. Then a panel on the side of the hull slid open. A platform extended, hovering just above the waterline. 2 men in black tactical gear stepped out, arms crossed. They didn't hold weapons, but they looked like they could dismantle Arthur with their bare hands. Between them walked a man in a white linen suit. It wasn't Volkov. It was a lawyer. Arthur recognized the type. "Mr. Kingsley," the lawyer called out. His voice was amplified by a speaker system, booming across the water. "You are violating the perimeter. Turn around." "I want to see my wife," Arthur shouted back, standing up in the rocking boat. Ex-wife, the lawyer corrected calmly. And Ms. Prescott is currently in a meeting. She asked not to be disturbed. Tell her I know about the code. Tell her she can't steal my company. Mr. Kingsley, the lawyer checked a tablet he was holding. According to the document you signed at 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Ms. Prescott owns the intellectual property known as the intuitive kernel. You retained the brand name and the customer list. You have the shell. She has the engine. There is no theft. There is only repossession. Arthur fell back into the seat of his boat. Name your price, he choked out. Tell Volkov I'll pay him double whatever he's paying her. The lawyer smiled, a thin, razor-sharp expression. Mr. Volkov isn't paying her anything, Mr. Kingsley. They are partners. 50-50. Ms. Prescott is now the Chief Technical Officer of Volkov Ether Dynamics. Goodbye, Mr. Kingsley. The platform began to retract. Wait, Arthur screamed. Just let me talk to her. 1 minute, please. The desperation in his voice must have carried. The platform stopped. The lawyer stepped aside. From the shadows of the hull, a figure emerged. It was Harper. She looked different. That was the first thing Arthur noticed, as his boat bobbed helplessly in the wake of the massive yacht. The Harper he knew, the one he had ignored for the last 5 years, wore oversized cardigans and kept her hair in a messy bun. She walked with her shoulders hunched, as if trying to take up as little space as possible. The woman standing on the platform of the Leviathan was a stranger. She wore a tailored white jumpsuit that accentuated a silhouette Arthur hadn't realized she possessed. Her hair was loose, blowing in the Mediterranean breeze, catching the golden light of the setting sun. But it was her stance that stopped his heart. She stood with her feet apart, chin raised, looking down at him not with anger, but with a pity that burned worse than hatred. "Harper!" Arthur called out, his voice cracking. He sounded pathetic, and he knew it. "Harper, baby, listen to me." "I'm listening, Arthur," she said. Her voice wasn't amplified, but in the sudden quiet of the ocean, it carried perfectly. It was calm, measured. "You have 60 seconds before security removes you." "What are you doing?" Arthur gestured frantically at the yacht. "These people, Volkov, they are the enemy. They want to destroy what we built." "What we built?" Harper arched an eyebrow. "Arthur, you haven't written a line of code since 2014. You built a brand. I built the brain. And you tried to sell the brain for $50,000 so you could buy Jade a new bracelet." Arthur winced. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Look, we can fix this. Come back to California. I'll tear up the agreement. I'll give you half. No, I'll give you 51%. You can be CEO. Just don't give the code to the Russians. Harper laughed. It was a light, airy sound that chilled him to the bone. "You still don't get it. It's not about the money, Arthur. It never was." "Then what? What do you want?" "Do you remember my birthday last year?" she asked suddenly. Arthur blinked, thrown off balance. "What, your birthday?" "Yes, October 14th. Do you remember where you were?" Arthur racked his brain. October. He had been in Tokyo, or was it London? I was closing the deal with Samsung." "No," Harper said softly. "You were in Cabo, with Jade. You told me you were in a clean room facility in Seoul and couldn't be reached, but you forgot to turn off your location sharing on the iPad we shared." Arthur froze. "I sat at home alone on my 40th birthday," Harper continued, her voice devoid of tears. "I stared at that dot on the map in Cabo, and I realized something. I realized that the man I loved didn't exist. He was just a projection, a glitch in my life, and like any good engineer, when I find a bug, I fix it. So this is revenge? Arthur spat. You're destroying $1 billion company because I cheated. No, Harper shook her head. I'm not destroying it. I'm migrating it. The ether system was designed to help the world, to optimize food distribution, to lower emissions. You turned it into a profit machine that squeezes workers and cuts corners. Volkov, he has many faults, but he listens to me. He wants to use the code for energy grid stabilization. He wants to save the planet, Arthur. You just want to buy another Bentley. Volkov is a gangster, Arthur screamed. Volkov is a businessman who read the contract, she countered. Something you failed to do. A heavy metal door opened behind her. Nicholas Volkov stepped out. He was a giant of a man, bearded and imposing, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to Harper and rested a heavy hand on her shoulder. He didn't look at Arthur. To him, Arthur was just a noisy seagull. Dinner is served, moya dorogaya, Volkov rumbled deeply. Harper took the glass. She looked at Arthur one last time. Go home, Arthur. The servers at Kingsley Tech will be wiped clean in exactly. She checked her watch, a sleek platinum piece he had never seen. 2 hours. I suggest you start writing a press release. I hear technical difficulties is a popular excuse. Harper, please, you can't do this. It's already done, she said. She turned her back on him. The platform began to rise, sealing the hull of the yacht. Harper, Arthur screamed, starting his engine and revving it aggressively, as if he could ram the steel plating. The 2 security guards on the platform didn't flinch. One of them simply lifted a radio to his lips. A siren blared from the direction of the harbor. Arthur looked back to see a Monaco police patrol boat speeding toward him, blue lights flashing. Monsieur, the police officer shouted over the megaphone, cut your engine. You are under arrest for harassment and violating maritime safety zones. Arthur looked at the closing door of the yacht, then at the police boat. He was trapped. As the police boat pulled alongside him and an officer jumped aboard to cuff him, Arthur watched the Leviathan's massive engines churn the water. The yacht began to move, turning slowly toward the open sea, taking his wife, his fortune, and his future with it. He sat in the back of the police boat, handcuffed, wet and shivering. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, hard dread. He needed a lawyer. He needed a phone. I need to make a call, Arthur demanded of the officer. At the station, the officer grunted. Arthur sat back, closing his eyes. He thought about who he could call. Henderson was incompetent. Gerald was panicking. Jade. He realized with a sick feeling that Jade wouldn't answer. She tracked the news. She probably already knew the stock was tanking. Jade didn't date men who were under arrest and losing their fortunes. He was alone. But as the police boat entered the harbor, Arthur's mind began to race. He wasn't done. He was Arthur Kingsley. He had built an empire from nothing once. He could do it again. He just needed an angle. He needed to find dirt on Volkov. He needed to find dirt on Harper. You think you've won, he whispered to the vanishing silhouette of the yacht. But you forgot one thing, Harper. You left your laptop at the house. The old one. A slow, malicious smile spread across his face. He remembered the old MacBook she kept in the guest room safe. The one she hadn't used in 3 years. It might not have the new code, but it had her old emails, her old journals. Maybe, just maybe. It had the skeletons he needed to bury her. He just had to get back to Los Angeles before she realized she had left it behind. The flight back to Los Angeles was a blur of painkillers and white-hot rage. Arthur had managed to secure a seat on a commercial first-class flight, a humiliation in itself, after his private jet was impounded in Nice due to a sudden credit irregularity with the fuel supplier. The walls were closing in, but Arthur Kingsley was too arrogant to see the bars. He only saw the obstacles he needed to smash. He landed at LAX at 4 a.m. The paparazzi were already there. They swarmed the exit like locusts, their flashes blinding in the pre-dawn gloom. "Mr. Kingsley, is it true the company is insolvent?" "Arthur, did Harper steal the code, or did you give it to her?" "Comment on the SEC investigation rumors." Arthur pushed through them, his bodyguard shoving a camera lens out of his face. He dove into the waiting SUV and screamed at the driver to go. When he arrived at his Malibu estate, he expected sanctuary. Instead, he found a moving van blocking the driveway. He stumbled out of the car, tie undone, eyes bloodshot. "What is this? Who authorized this?" The front door opened and Jade walked out. She wasn't wearing the diamond earrings he had bought her for their anniversary. She was wearing sweatpants and carrying a cage containing her Pomeranian. "Jade?" Arthur blinked, confused. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving, Arthur," she said, not even breaking stride. She handed a garment bag to one of the movers. "I saw the stock ticker. Kingsley Tech dropped 40% in 6 hours. My financial advisor said your assets are going to be frozen by Monday." "It's a glitch!" Arthur shouted, grabbing her arm. She shook him off with surprising strength. "Jade, baby, I have a plan. I'm going to destroy her. I'm going to get it all back." Jade looked at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You don't get it. It's over. You were only interesting when you were a winner. Now? You're just a desperate old man yelling at a boat." She climbed into her convertible. "Oh, and Arthur, I took the artwork. Consider it severance." She sped off, leaving him standing alone in the driveway of his $30 million hollow shell. Arthur didn't scream. He didn't cry. He walked into the house, marching past the empty spots on the walls where the Picassos used to hang. He went straight to the guest bedroom. He threw open the closet door and ripped the safe from its hidden panel behind the shelving. He punched in the code, 0824, the date he founded the company. The door swung open. There it was, an old, battered MacBook Pro from 2018. It was covered in stickers Harper had liked, NASA logos, kittens, coding humor. It looked innocent. Arthur pulled it out, his hands trembling. He carried it to the kitchen island, plugged it in, and booted it up. Password required. "Damn it," Arthur hissed. He tried her birthday. Incorrect. He tried their anniversary. Incorrect. He tried the name of her first dog. Incorrect. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. It belonged to a man known only as Kozak, a freelance cybersecurity contractor who usually handled corporate espionage for the highest bidder. "Kozak," Arthur barked, "I need you at my house, now." "I don't do house calls, Kingsley," a distorted voice replied, "and I hear you're toxic right now. I'll pay you 50,000 cash. It's in the wall safe, untraceable." There was a pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. 30 minutes later, Kozak sat at the pristine marble island. He was a small, nervous man who smelled of energy drinks and ozone. He typed furiously on a peripheral keyboard he had connected to the laptop. Arthur paced behind him, drinking directly from a bottle of expensive scotch. "How long?" "Her encryption is good," Kozak muttered. "Custom kernel level." But she got lazy with the localized hash. She didn't update the OS security patch from 3 years ago. Click. The screen flashed. The desktop appeared. It was a picture of Arthur and Harper from their honeymoon in Bora Bora. They looked happy. Arthur stared at it, feeling a phantom pain in his chest, which he quickly drowned with more scotch. "I'm in," Kozak said. "What are we looking for?" "Dirt," Arthur said, leaning over the screen. "Emails to competitors, plans to sabotage the company. Anything I can use to prove she acted in bad faith before the divorce." Kozak began clicking through folders. Documents, photos, receipts. Wait, here's a folder labeled Project Contingency. Open it, Arthur commanded. Inside were hundreds of PDF files. Kozak opened the first one. It was a bank transfer record. This is an offshore account, Kozak said, squinting. Cayman Islands, transfer of $2 million. Date, May 2019. She was stealing from me, Arthur shouted triumphantly. I knew it. She was funneling money out. Kozak opened another file. Another one. Zurich, 5 million. September 2020. Arthur laughed, a manic, jagged sound. This is it. Embezzlement. RICO charges. If I release this, she goes to federal prison. The divorce settlement is voided. The IP reverts to the victim. Me! Wait, Kozak said, pausing. He scrolled down to the metadata of the files. Arthur, look at the signature on the authorization. Arthur squinted at the screen. The authorization signature at the bottom of the bank transfer wasn't Harper's. It was his own. Arthur froze. The memories came flooding back through the haze of alcohol. 2019. The consulting fees he had paid to shell companies to avoid taxes, the bribes he had paid to regulators to fast-track the ether approval. I remember this, Arthur whispered. I told her to handle the paperwork. I told her to make the problems go away. She kept the receipts, Kozak said quietly. She didn't steal the money, Kingsley. She organized the evidence of you stealing it. It doesn't matter. Arthur slammed his hand on the counter. It's on her private laptop. If we leak this, we can doctor the signature. We can Photoshop her name over mine. The public won't know the difference until the stock stabilizes. I just need to win the news cycle. Kozak pulled his hands away from the keyboard. Whoa. I do hacking, Kingsley. I don't do federal forgery. If this gets traced back... Do it, Arthur roared, grabbing Kozak by the collar. Or I call the cops and tell them you broke into my house. I'll ruin you. Kozak stared at him, fear in his eyes. He slowly nodded. Okay. I can swap the digital signatures. It'll take an hour. Good, Arthur released him. He walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. The sun was rising. It was going to be a beautiful day. She thought she was smart keeping this insurance policy, Arthur muttered to himself. But she forgot that history is written by the victors. He didn't notice that as Kozak worked, the hacker's eyes were darting nervously to a small, blinking red icon in the corner of the laptop's taskbar, an icon that looked like a small, sleeping dragon. When Kozak finished, he handed Arthur a USB drive. It's done. The files on this drive show Harper Prescott transferring company funds to personal accounts. It looks authentic. Get out! Arthur tossed a bundle of cash at him. Kozak didn't count it. He grabbed his gear and ran out the door as if the house were on fire. Arthur held the USB drive up to the light. It was his weapon, his salvation. He picked up his phone and dialed the number for the Global Press Association. This is Arthur Kingsley, he said, his voice steady for the first time in 24 hours. I am calling an emergency press conference at Kingsley Tech headquarters at noon. I have evidence of massive corporate fraud committed by Harper Prescott, and I'm going to air it live. The atrium of Kingsley Tech was packed. Every major news outlet, tech blog, and financial network had a crew present. The atmosphere was electric. The fall of a titan was always a spectator sport, and Arthur Kingsley was promising a bloodbath. Arthur stood backstage, checking his reflection. He had shaved, showered, and put on his power suit, a charcoal three-piece that usually signaled a hostile takeover. He looked almost like his old self, if you ignored the slight twitch in his left eye. Sir, are you sure about this? Gerald asked. The CFO looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Legal hasn't vetted the documents on the drive. Legal is fired if they get in my way, Arthur snapped. Connect the laptop to the main projector. I want these documents 40 feet high behind me. Arthur walked out onto the stage. The flashbulbs erupted like a thunderstorm. He raised his hands for silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Arthur began, his voice booming through the auditorium. "Yesterday, you saw images of my ex-wife, Harper Prescott, celebrating on the yacht of a foreign oligarch. You were told a story of a woman scorned. But today, I am here to tell you the story of a criminal." A murmur went through the crowd. "For years," Arthur continued, pacing the stage, "I suspected money was leaking from this company. I trusted Harper. I let her handle the books, because I was too busy building the technology that powers this world. I was blind. But last night, I discovered the truth." He clicked the remote in his hand. The massive screen behind him lit up. It displayed the doctored bank documents Kozak had created. "Here you see a transfer of $5 million to a Swiss account," Arthur pointed. "Authorized by Harper Prescott. This is just one of dozens. She didn't leave because of a divorce. She fled because she knew I was getting close to the truth. She stole the Ether code to sell it to Volkov to cover her tracks." The room went into a frenzy. Reporters were shouting questions. The stock ticker on the side of the screen showed Kingsley Tech shares ticking up slightly. It was working. He was controlling the narrative. "I am hereby announcing," Arthur shouted over the noise, "that we are filing federal charges against Harper Prescott for embezzlement, industrial espionage, and fraud. We will not rest until she is extradited and—" Screech! A high-pitched audio feedback loop tore through the speakers, causing everyone in the room to cover their ears. Arthur winced, dropping the remote. "Sound! Fix the sound!" he yelled at the booth. But the sound didn't stop. It shifted. It morphed into a digital chime, the startup sound of the original Ether software. The screen behind Arthur flickered. The bank documents vanished. In their place, a live video feed appeared. It was crisp, high definition. It showed the interior of a state-of-the-art command center. Sitting in a leather chair, looking directly into the camera, was Harper. She wasn't on the yacht anymore. She was in a studio, flanked by monitors displaying complex code. "Hello, Arthur." Her voice filled the auditorium. It wasn't angry, it was disappointed. Arthur froze on stage. "Cut the feed," he screamed. "Cut it now." "They can't cut it, Arthur," Harper said calmly. "I still have root access to the building's AV system. You really should have changed the admin passwords." The reporters had gone silent, their cameras now trained on the screen. "You want to talk about the documents on the laptop?" Harper asked. "Let's talk about them. You found the insurance folder, didn't you?" "You stole the money!" Arthur shouted, sweating under the lights. "The evidence is right here." "You mean the evidence you paid a hacker named Kozak to alter at 5:30 this morning?" Harper asked. Arthur's heart stopped. "How?" "The laptop," Harper explained, addressing the press, "was a honeypot. I left it behind, on purpose. I knew that when you got desperate, you'd go looking for dirt. I knew you'd find the records of the bribes you paid to the EPA in 2019 to ignore the server farm emissions. I knew you'd try to frame me for it." She tapped a key. "So I installed a keystroke logger and a webcam capture." The screen split. On one side was Harper. On the other side was a grainy black and white video recorded only hours ago. It showed Arthur standing in his kitchen, watching Kozak. Audio from the clip played, "Do it, or I call the cops. Swap the digital signatures. The public won't know the difference." The gasp from the audience sucked the air out of the room. It was undeniable. It was Arthur, on tape, ordering the forgery. Arthur backed away from the podium. No, that's a deep fake. It's AI." "It's not AI, Arthur," Harper said, "and neither is this." She tapped another key. The screen changed again. This time, it showed a live view of the lobby of the Kingsley Tech building. Through the glass doors, a dozen agents in FBI windbreakers were entering, weapons drawn, moving with purpose. I sent the original, unaltered files to the Department of Justice the moment your hacker decrypted the folder, Harper said. The poison pill wasn't a virus, Arthur. It was a whistleblower protocol. By opening that folder, you turned yourself in. Arthur looked at the back of the room. The doors burst open. "Arthur Kingsley!" An FBI agent shouted, his voice amplified. "Step away from the podium. Put your hands in the air." Arthur looked at the agents, then back at the giant screen where Harper's face loomed over him like a judgment. "Why?" he whispered, his voice caught by the microphone. "Why didn't you just leave?" Harper leaned into the camera. "I did leave, Arthur. I left you the house. I left you the money. I left you your dignity. But you couldn't let it go. You had to try and destroy me. You chose this ending." As the agents swarmed the stage, grabbing Arthur by the arms and forcing him to his knees, the feed from Harper cut to black. The last thing Arthur saw before his face was pressed into the stage floor, was the logo of his own company, the company he had built on her genius, shining above him. Then, the screen went dark. 3 months later, the world had moved on, as it always does. The Kingsley scandal had dominated the news cycle for 2 weeks, then faded into a series of legal briefs and courtroom sketches. Arthur Kingsley was currently out on bail, awaiting trial for wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. He was living in a rented studio apartment in Van Nuys, his assets completely frozen, his reputation incinerated. Harper Prescott sat on the terrace of a villa in Santorini. The Aegean Sea stretched out before her, a canvas of deep, impossible blue. On the table sat a tablet displaying the stock performance of Volkov Aether, the new entity formed from the merger. It was up 200%. "You're checking the numbers again," a voice rumbled. Nicholas Volkov walked onto the terrace, carrying 2 espressos. He was wearing casual clothes, linen trousers and a loose shirt. The imposing, terrifying oligarch the media loved to hate looked surprisingly domestic. "Old habits," Harper smiled, taking the coffee. "I just want to make sure the integration is stable. The solar grid in sub-Saharan Africa comes online today. It's running on my kernel." "It's running perfectly," Nicholas assured her, sitting opposite. "You fixed the world, Harper. Just like you said you would." Harper looked out at the water. She felt light. For 10 years, she had carried the weight of Arthur's ego, Arthur's lies, and Arthur's debts. Now she was free. She was wealthy beyond imagination, yes, but more importantly, she was recognized. Her name was on the patents. Her face was on the magazine covers, not as a wife, but as an innovator. "There is one loose end," Nicholas said, his tone changing slightly. He slid a folder across the table. "What is this?" Harper asked. "Arthur." Harper didn't touch the folder. "I don't care about Arthur. The lawyers are handling it." "This isn't about the trial," Nicholas said. "It's about the settlement, specifically the bad faith clause you tricked him into signing." "I know," Harper said. "It voided the non-compete. It gave me the IP." "It did more than that," Nicholas said, a mischievous glint in his eye. "My legal team found a subsection in the prenuptial agreement that Arthur's lawyer, Henderson, added 5 years ago to protect Arthur's assets, in case you cheated. It states that if one party is proven to have committed a felony against the marital estate, the entirety of their remaining personal assets transfers to the victim as restitution." Harper stared at him. "You mean? I mean, Arthur doesn't just lose the company," Nicholas grinned. "He loses the $50,000. He loses the car. He loses the rights to his own name if it's used for commercial purposes. You own Arthur Kingsley as a brand." Harper laughed. It was a genuine, full-bodied laugh. She picked up the folder and weighed it in her hand. She thought about Arthur in his studio apartment, blaming everyone but himself. She thought about the way he had looked at her in that courtroom, like she was furniture, like she was disposable. "What do you want to do?" Nicholas asked. "We can enforce it. Strip him naked. Leave him on the street." Harper looked at the horizon. She took a sip of her espresso. "No," she said softly. "No." Nicholas seemed surprised. "After everything he did? After the humiliation?" "If I take everything, I'm just playing his game," Harper said. She opened the folder, took a pen, and wrote a quick note on the top document. "Keep the name. I've made a better one." She closed the folder. "Send it to him. Let him keep his 50 grand. Let him keep his car. Let him live his life, knowing that he exists solely because I allowed it. That is a far worse punishment for a man like Arthur. Every time he buys a coffee, every time he drives that car, he will know it was a gift from the wife he called stupid." Nicholas smiled, raising his coffee cup in a toast. "To mercy. It is a dangerous luxury." "To the future," Harper corrected him. As she clinked her cup against his, her phone buzzed. It was a notification from the new ether system. The African solar grid was live. Efficiency was at 99%. Harper turned off the screen. She didn't need to watch the numbers anymore. She knew the code was perfect. She stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace, the wind catching her hair. She wasn't Mrs. Kingsley anymore. She wasn't even just Harper Prescott. She was the architect of her own life. And down in the harbor below, a new yacht was pulling in. It wasn't the Leviathan. It was smaller, sleeker, designed for speed and agility. On the stern, painted in gold letters, was the name she had chosen for herself. The Intuition. Harper smiled. She had never argued during the divorce because she knew something Arthur never learned. The loudest person in the room is usually the most frightened. The one who wins is the one who quietly rewrites the rules. What a ride. From a silent courtroom in Los Angeles to the high seas of Monaco, Harper Prescott showed us that sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming, it's succeeding. She didn't just survive her divorce, she leveraged it to reclaim her genius, her fortune, and her life, leaving her ex-husband with nothing but a doctored USB drive and a lifetime of regret. It's a powerful reminder that when someone underestimates you, you don't argue. You just wait, you plan, and when the time is right, you execute. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes revenge and corporate justice, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. We drop new dramatic stories every week. Share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that silence is powerful. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.